One of the incredible things about Bluey is how much it is watched by people that don't have kids at home. And in fact, we've even heard of sorority parties where girls get together and drink wine to watch Bluey because it's so nostalgic. Yeah, so nostalgic and wonderful. How do I describe the brand of Bluey? Well, Bluey's, I mean, it was created not actually as a kids show, but as a show about family life. And I think what it does is it's all about capturing the authentic moments of family life for good and for bad. And one of the things that people love about Bluey is how relatable it is. You simultaneously want to sort of hug and yell at your kids at the same time. And I think what Bluey does is it leans right into that family emotion and that family dynamic and how hard it is to be a parent, but how amazing it is. And whether you are a parent or you were a parent or, you know, you had parents, it's relatable for everyone. So I think it's all about that, you know, conjuring up magic family moments in a really authentic way.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to How She Does It, where we introduce you to extraordinary female leaders and find out how they do it. I'm Karen Feinerman. I'm a long-term Wall Street investor, a mother of four, and a panelist on CNBC's Fast Money. Now, can you guess what the most streamed TV show in the U.S. was last year and so far this year? It's Bluey, the hugely popular animated show produced by the BBC about a young dog and her family living in Queensland, Australia. Since the beginning of 2024, the show has amassed more than 80 billion minutes of streaming time on Disney+. 80 billion. So how do you build on a success like that? That's one of the things our guest Nicki Sheard does as CEO of BBC Brands and Licensing. In addition to Bluey, her mission is to grow brands like Doctor Who, Dancing with the Stars, and BBC Earth. Her career has been a fascinating journey encompassing everything from dissecting fruit flies in a lab to working in consulting with stints at Charlotte Tilbury and Candy Crush along the way. Nicki and I chatted about why she listened to her gut and pivoted away from a career in science, what she says yes to and no to when it comes to Bluey, and how AI is being used to create new ways of interacting with some beloved brands. This was a really interesting conversation. Hope you enjoy. Nicki Sheard, thank you so much for being here. Really excited to have you in person.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So you had a moment early on when you were deep into earning a PhD at Harvard for what you thought would be a career in academia and sciences. And what happened?
The plan was always to be a scientist. So I was at school. I was good at science. I don't know what careers advice is like in American high schools, but at my school, if you were good at science, they suggested you were a scientist. So that was kind of plan A. So I did my undergraduate degree in the UK and I thought, right, I really enjoyed that. I'm going to go off and do a PhD and move to the US. And then 2 years in, I thought, wow, I really don't like this.
So I've heard you were studying fruit flies at Harvard.
Yes. So fruit flies are used as a model organism in genetics. And so we were using them to study the genes that drive growth of the neuromuscular system. My roommates always used to complain because I bring them home in my hair. But they're sort of extraordinary and probably underappreciated organisms. But something just didn't sit quite right with me. And as I said, I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a job to come back to, but something in me just felt like this wasn't right. And now looking back, knowing things like Myers-Briggs and insights, you know, I had a completely opposite profile to most scientists. And I realized that the academic work wasn't suited to me. But at the time, it was a pretty big decision. I don't know if I was brilliant or stupid to make it. And actually, the feedback I got from friends and family and people around me was pretty mixed about whether it was brave or foolish.
Well, just what was the phone call or the discussion with your parents when you told them, yeah, I'm leaving this PhD at Harvard program?
It was sort of well, of course we support you, darling, whatever you decide to do, but kind of a conversation. And I think, you know, you're a parent, I'm a parent, you just worry for your kids. And I think that I had no idea what else I was going to do. So of course they were supportive, but I think they were concerned.
You say you don't know if it was stupid or not, but it's certainly brave, for sure, right? To make that pivot without even knowing where you're going to go. I mean, what really gave you the guts to actually do it, not just think it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I do think there is a bit of the folly of youth there. And I wonder if I had been older and had more commitments around me, whether I'd have had the boldness to do it. But I think I just felt in my gut that it wasn't right. And when it comes to decision making, I have a sort of I go sort of heart, head, heart. And I feel it first, and then I go through a very logical process, and I kind of come to an outcome, and then I feel it again. And I think that's what I did there. I just thought, it doesn't feel right. And I think that's been a lot of what's driven me since, that just feeling about, does this feel right?
I have this little shorthand I do for that kind of decision. It's a two-part thing. It's flip a coin. So pick, heads I stay, tails I go. You flip it, whatever comes up. Quickly answer the question, do I want to flip again?
That's so interesting. I love that.
Which tells you what your gut
But
is.
that's that head heart, isn't it?
So next time.
Yeah. Next time I'll try that.
Okay. So, all right. Well, you found middle ground. You took a job using your skills in science at Procter & Gamble.
Yep.
Then another pivot happens. Tell us about that.
So I joined, so I thought, well, I'm not enjoying academic science very much. Why don't I go try do science in a commercial environment? So I joined Procter as a research scientist, and it was the days where like more is more. It was like, don't have 2 stripes in your toothpaste, have 3, So that was the kind of work I was doing. And then I remember one day I was in the lab, and I sort of was peeking out of the door of the lab, and these cool group of people with wheelie suitcases and suits. And I was like, oh, who's that? And someone said, oh, they're the brand managers. They run the show. And I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. And so while I was at Procter, I then moved from research science into brand management, which was quite a rare thing to do within the organization. People tended to stay in their tracks.
So how did you convince them to let you make that switch? I don't know how easy it is to sort of move departments.
There was no precedent for it, or very little precedent. So it wasn't an easy thing to do. But I think, I remember making a case to the brand lead, and I think they wanted to keep me. And so they decided to let me have a go. But they had a very strict policy at P&G. You came in at one level and you worked up. They didn't at that point do any recruiting from the outside. So I had to go back down a level. So I had to go right back down to the entry level, which again was a difficult thing to do when you'd been there and established yourself a little bit. But I think they wanted to keep me, and they thought it was better to let me have a go. There was no looking back.
So was there another call to the parents? Good news and bad news.
No, I think by this, as long as it was a sort of a known name, there were calls to the parents later on where we definitely had differences of opinion. And I have definitely negotiated. My mum's called Sue. I have negotiated what I've called like a Sue Sheard clause into some of my contracts on the basis of conversations I've had with her. So really? Even though she doesn't come from a business world at all, she's a teacher. She has very sage advice to give.
What are some of her contract points that you would...
Well, it's, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, think about your boundaries, think about things you want, think about just sensible things. And your own parents have always just got your best interests at heart. And sometimes in the enthusiasm of negotiating a new job, sometimes you can forget that. So I think it's just, she reminds me that I've got agency and I should deploy it.
Good for her. So one of the through lines in your career is being open to leaping into new opportunities. Okay, so the next stop after Procter & Gamble is McKinsey.
Yep. I did learn through that experience, I learned 2 things. One, I didn't want to be a consultant. I love the thrust and the mess of an organization and getting things done. And secondly, I didn't want to work 20-hour days. Like, my life is really important to me, and I want to work hard, and I'm really ambitious, but the hours were really long. And at some point I just, I was ready to have a family. But mostly it was the fact that I'm not by nature a consultant. I am an operator, and I love operating in an organization.
That makes sense. All right. So then your next stop was at BBC for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's in the news and music divisions.
Yes.
Okay, so what were you doing there then?
So it was a really interesting time at the BBC. So I was running marketing, first of all for news, and then for all of the radio stations and the music stations. And this was the time when digital was starting to grow to scale. So we were doing things like launching the first mobile website for BBC News. The BBC had a really important role to play in terms of taking consumers on a digital journey. We were launching all the digital radio stations, we were launching websites, we were launching Facebook, and it's a fascinating place to be. And it made me realize that to help people adapt and take on new technologies, you need compelling brands and compelling content to help them do that. And the BBC was a brilliant place to be because we were really at the forefront of taking people at scale to, it ages me, right? The mobile web. but you know, and then BBC News website is still one of the most used websites in the UK.
So while you were doing that, were you aware of the tectonic shift that was happening in media, social memedia?
Yeah, at that point, social media hadn't really taken off. So I remember for one of the, you know, we launched a Facebook page and we got about 3,000 views and we were just thrilled to bits. So where social media really came into its own was really scaling was when I was at Candy Crush, when I was at King. And that was the point when, first of all, Facebook really took off and then the mobile phone really took off. And I think what's interesting about these incredibly successful brands that I've been privileged to be a part of is where you get a great product with incredible quality that combines with some tech or social change. And I think that's what happened at Candy Crush, an amazing game that actually had existed on the web for quite a long time, but then combined with the power of Facebook and the mobile phone just suddenly came available to a new audience in a new way and allowed it to explode in a way that it wouldn't have done otherwise.
So Candy Crush, I've heard that you had never played an online game. What did you see there?
Yeah, so people often ask me, how do you find these amazing brands? And I go, I don't. I go a step back and I find amazing people. And the amazing people make the amazing brands. So I actually got a call from a very good friend who's a headhunter while I was on maternity leave with my second baby. And he said, you need to go and meet these Swedish guys. They've got this game. They don't know a lot about branding. I think you can really help them. And I was like, oh God, I didn't know if it was day or night. I was like, the baby wasn't sleeping. I was like, of course I'm not going to go and see. I can't play computer games. Isn't that for sort of teenage boys? And he actually, I credit him a lot with sort of helping me. He was like, just go meet them. And so I went to meet them and they were brilliant and they were interesting and they were trying to do something different. But what was really interesting for me is they weren't good at what I was good at. And for me, you want to find something where they're incredible, but you uniquely can help them. And so it was I think it was a moment of sort of oxytocin infueled madness, baby hormones. And that was a tough call to my mum because she said, you're leaving the BBC for what? For who? Like, who are
Candy Crush.
Candy what?
Yeah.
At that point. And it was probably, I've done a lot of pivots, but I think that was probably one of the most important ones because it really allowed me to be at the front end of the technology trend. That was a mad journey. So I started, and then about 4 or 5 months later, we had the IPO and then just the incredible growth of that game. And then ultimately the first sale to Activision Blizzard, and then the sort of subsequent sale obviously happened to Microsoft after that. But that was a really amazing journey. The phrase jack of all trades, master of none. And my daughter told me there's actually an extra bit to that, which is but oftentimes better than master of one, which I didn't.
Hold on.
So it's
oftentimes, okay.
So jack of all trades, master of none is oftentimes better than master of one. And I always used to think, is it a negative that I've moved around and I haven't gone very deep? And now I've come to realize that actually I think there's a place for people like me.
Yeah.
And particularly when you go into these organizations like Charlotte or like Candy Crush, a lot of the people they're from that industry and they have their deep passion, but sometimes just someone from the outside can just bring a little bit of a different perspective. And so I've come to sort of think that is the role I can play in these companies.
So the past few years, you've been back at the BBC as CEO Brands and Licensing. Can you give us an overview of what that job touches?
Yes. So I work for BBC Studios, which is the commercial arm of the BBC. And I'm responsible for taking our great shows, brands and IP and trying to find ways of making money from them outside of the core show. So that might be games, merch, music, live events, our YouTube channels, and making money around social. We've also got B2B businesses, so like a music publishing business. So we, license and sell music catalogs. We have an archive business where you can buy clips of our shows and we sell them to other showmakers. So it really is taking the core IP, whether it's Bluey, Doctor Who, the incredible landmark natural history programs, Blue Planet, and thinking about all the ways we can engage audiences around them, and then really importantly, make money from them. And then that money then goes back to the public service side of the BBC to help fund that.
What would you say your leadership style is?
Lots of people say they really enjoy managing people, but I genuinely enjoy understanding people and what makes them tick and trying to figure out how to put a team together and how to read a room and how to read the dynamics in a room. So I think my leadership style is quite consultative. We talk a lot in my current team, we talk about brilliant work done brilliantly. Like I'm really ambitious and I really like to push my teams, but it's so important to me that's done in a way with integrity and respect and openness. So I think I try and bring all of those things to me. And I haven't always been in my career, but I am now very authentic because I have to say I'm too old and too tired not to be. But I think I make choices now. I'm much clearer now on what kind of culture allows me to be me. And that's probably the most important thing in terms of picking a place to work. Yes, I want to have impact. And yes, I want to be able to do great things. But the culture really matters to me. So brilliant work done brilliantly is an important sort of pillar that I run my teams by.
So let me ask you, let's say you had someone who is just super talented, but very difficult to work with. What do you do?
I think it depends on how the difficult manifests itself. I don't mind spiky people. Like I think you don't want someone who's pretty good at everything but not excellent at things. So I think if they're spiky, as in they're good at certain things but not good at other things, it's okay. I think if they're, am I allowed to say asshole?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I won't have
worse.
I won't have assholes though. There has to be a fundament. I don't mind ambition. I don't mind pushing, but there has to be a fundamental level of respect and integrity and those sorts of things. So I think it would depend how the difficulty manifested itself.
So did you have mentors that guided you through various parts of your career?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I love the bit in the movies where they put the team together. Like in Ocean's 11, they have a person who does this and a person who does that. So I sort of like to think about my support network rather than a mentor. It's a team of people around you that do different things. So you have your girlfriends who are like completely critical if you just need a wine and these sorts of things. And then I have a couple of mentors. I've got one who always just tells me I'm great. And if I'm having a bad day, I'll go see him. And then I have another one who always tells me I could be doing more. So if I feel like if I need a bit of a kick up the backside, I'll go see him. But probably I had an amazing coach. For about 10 years, I worked with the same coach. And I was having a lot of, I suffer quite badly with anxiety. And I was having quite a difficult time with that and really questioning, could I be a CMO? And she was just the most incredible person, very tough, very smart, like much smarter than me, like the first coach I'd worked with who really pushed me. And she was quite transformational in my life. And it was particularly when I had young kids and you're tired and you just got a lot going on. But she gave me the confidence to go get this first CMO job, and then just everything else opened up from that.
So you said you suffer from imposter syndrome. How's that going?
Well, I did. So I think that was what I really worked on with her. And I know there's various schools of thoughts about, is it a real thing? And women don't talk about it. But the way it manifests itself in me is anxiety. I was recently diagnosed with ADHD as well, which I think happens to quite a lot of women. Their kids have ADHD and they go, hang on a minute, this and so I've started to understand a lot more now about my brain and how it works, and that's been really transformative. But the biggest issue with it is the voices in the head that can be incredibly helpful and drive a lot of the pattern recognition and all of these sorts of things also have high levels of anxiety. And so I think for me, one of the things I've really worked on is addressing that. And what actually this coach helped me figure out was the rate determining step for my success is actually me, and me wanting to do something, and me having the confidence to do something, and me believing in myself to do something. So we're all a work in progress, and that's rather better at the moment than it has been at other times. But it's something that's always there and something that I always have to stay on top of.
So even seeing your sort of string of successes hasn't dampened somewhat this imposter syndrome, but it's still there.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And actually the scientist in me, it's one of the things I learned to do, which is if you're doubting yourself, just look at the data. Does the data suggest you can't do this job? Does the data suggest that everyone in the room's looking at you going, she's crazy? Does that? And that's one of the things that actually I find very helpful. But it's definitely much, much better managed now, and much, much better managed with age and all sorts of other things. I've got much better understanding of the triggers, but also what I need to do to keep on top of it. But it will always be there. It will always be in me.
Let's talk Bluey. Okay, so I'm a little bit out of the demo. My kids are in their 20s. But for someone who may be less familiar, how do you describe the brand of Bluey?
Interestingly, you're not out of the demo, because one of the incredible things about Bluey is how much it is watched by people that don't have kids at home. And in fact, we've even heard of sorority parties where girls get together and drink wine to watch Bluey, because it's so nostalgic. Yeah, so nostalgic and wonderful. How do I describe the brand of Bluey? Well, Bluey's, it was created not actually as a kids show, but as a show about family life. And I think what it does is it's all about capturing the authentic moments of family life, for good and for bad. And one of the things that people love about Bluey is how relatable it is. You simultaneously want to sort of hug and yell at your kids at the same time. And I think what Bluey does is it leans right into that family emotion and that family dynamic, and how hard it is to be a parent, but how amazing it is. And whether you are a parent or you were a parent or you had parents, it's relatable for everyone. So I think it's all about that conjuring up magic family moments in a really authentic way. So it was written by Joe Brum, a brilliant man, based on his own experience of being a parent. And I think that's one of the reasons it rings so true. Made by a production house called Ludo Studios, also in Brisbane. And then the BBC have the global distribution and commercial rights. And then we have many partners around the world, but particularly Disney. So you will have seen it in the US on Disney. But it is the #1 TV show in the US, not just the kids' TV show, but the most streamed TV show in the US, which is just extraordinary. It varies per market, but it is pretty much consistently the top kids show and a real global phenomenon. And I think because those truths about family life are real wherever you are in the world. And I was talking to someone the other day, the best TV shows of all times, whether it's The Simpsons or The Sopranos, or again, they're different shows, but really they're about family life and you seeing a bit of yourself, even if it's an extreme version or just a little bit of a version in those shows. And that's what makes them so relatable, I think.
So when did you have a sense of the promise of Bluey as a worldwide phenomenon?
Well, it was interesting. So I joined the BBC in 2020. I started on the first day of COVID lockdown, by the way, which is terrible day to start. Anyway, the end of week 2, I wrote a memo to my then boss. And about the third bullet point was, Bluey seems to be taking off. I don't think we're doing enough with it. I'd like to explore doing some more. So I think just from talking to the people around the business and people who'd been in kids' telly for a while, I started to get a sense that there was something very special. So I think almost immediately upon starting the job, I thought we needed to get behind it more. And I probably within my first couple of months took an investment paper to our board and said, I think we need to put more money behind it. I think we need to put more people behind it. Something's happening with it. So heavily signaled by the team, but I recognized quite quickly that we had something very special on our hands.
Well, that is an amazing skill to recognize that. So I hear Bluey will debut in Disney parks. How big a deal is that?
It's a massive deal.
Yeah.
So we worked really hard on that deal with Disney, and it's very rare for them to take, a brand that isn't their own into parks. And I think it says a lot about how much they love Bluey and what wonderful partners they've been to Bluey. So in early next year, Bluey will launch into parks here. And then, of course, we're working on the movie, which is coming out in 2027. I was in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, got a sneak preview of progress, and I think that's just going to be incredible in 2027. I cannot wait for families to experience Bluey in movie theatres all around the world.
What will the format be of the movie? Is it live action?
I cannot reveal any information,
Okay.
I'm afraid, at this stage. You will just have to, we will invite you to the premiere and you can come and experience the magic.
Okay. So given how popular Bluey is, I'm sure there are things that you have said no to for Bluey. What are some examples of that?
I think as you grow a brand like this, you have to find that balance between wanting to grow it, but also never moving too far away from the essence of the brand. So we've said no to lots of things. One of our guiding principles that we talk about a lot as a team is show to shelf, which means we want to bring as much of what people love about the show to the shelf or the stage or whatever else we're doing. And if we can't find a way to do something that's authentic to the show, it's better not to do it. So we spend ages working with our toy partners, making sure that the lids of the trash cans are exactly the same color as the lids in the show. Or when we did the stage show, it was actually written as an episode of the TV show was. So when you went to the theatre, kids and their families, it would feel the same as a show. And we really try and think about that at the core of everything we do. But I think the most important thing is just, if you want a brand this special to be around for a long time, is you've got to keep coming back to, is it authentic? Is it true to what we originally set out to do? And if you've got any doubt about that, it's better not to do it than to do it.
So you're also actively marketing to adults.
Well, one of the things we've seen about this brand, so it's got huge appeal, as I mentioned, beyond parents. And it's also a brand where people really strongly associate themselves with it. You see families going out dressed up for Halloween, like they really feel, I'm the bandit who's the dad, or I'm the chili, or this is my bingo, and it's a real privilege when fans do that. And we definitely see a different pattern in our sales than other preschool toys. So we sell, for other preschool toys, they'll sell a lot more toys. We sell a lot of clothing, and we do sell a lot of adult clothing as well. And we're continuing to explore that space. And that's great because, again, there aren't many other kids' brands where the parents would want to wear them, or even teens would want to wear them. And we do know that's the case with Bluey. I mean, we have the store Hot Topic here. I mean, we just done a beautiful range with Converse that are so cool. And whenever I wear my Bluey Converse shoes, I get stopped in the street. We've got these gorgeous high top boots that we did for Hot Topic over here, and they're just so beautiful. I mean, I literally get stopped everywhere I go. People going, where do I get those? They're so beautiful. And, one of the other things you can do once you've got a broader audience is you think about where that audience are. So, for example, we invested in launching the brand on TikTok, and you wouldn't necessarily do that for a preschool brand. YouTube is very big, but we know that's kids watching with their parents or by themselves. But TikTok really is an adult audience, and there was an audience there for content. And it was interesting. We originally thought that audience would want a lot of the funny content, which they do, but they actually like some of the more moving content from the show. So the show touches on really interesting topic, like it touches on infertility, and in one of the episodes they find a dead bird, and you just assume because it's a kids TV show the bird is going to wake up and be fine, but no, the bird's dead. And then the parent is dealing with that, and then 2 minutes later you're playing a silly game. So and I think those real sort of moments of parenting were the ones that we found worked quite well on TikTok, and so that's been a real success for us.
That's really interesting. All right, I want to switch to another project. You've done something really interesting with Agatha Christie and her estate. Can you explain what that is?
So one of the businesses that is part of my portfolio at BBC Studios is called BBC Maestro. And it's a bit like Masterclass here. It is incredible professionals, maestri, who teach you how to do something. So it could be Mark Ronson and music producing, or quite a lot of them are to do with books, because everyone thinks they can write a book. And the team that run Maestro do polls or do surveys to find out what would be the course that people would most want to do. And what came back every time was Agatha Christie, or how to write a crime book, because she is the best-selling crime writer of all time. And the team were like, oh, that's interesting. And then suddenly they had a moment of, oh, what if? Could we actually, deploying technology, make that happen? So they had a conversation with the Agatha Christie estate, and that they were, I think it was fair to say, curious but skeptical. And they said if the great-grandson of Agatha Christie runs the estate, but his father, so Agatha's grandson, was the person who is closest to Agatha, who's still around. And he said, well, look, if my dad is okay with it, we can look at it, but we have the power of veto at any stage during the project. And so the team said, of course. So they embarked upon this incredible research project. They got together some of the best Agatha scholars in the UK, and they've spent the first part of the project just pulling together a huge body of evidence around how Agatha approached writing, her style, everything she had said, because we knew we were going to use Gen AI in the course, but we didn't want the Gen AI to create any of her words. The technology was only going to be deployed to create her likeness. And then the technologists got together to try and figure out how, from about a minute and a half of video clips, when
is that all you had?
I mean, it was a tiny,
really?
I forget the amount, but it was minutes. And of course it was all her going into a theatre from a distance, or her from the side.
Not well lit, not right
well
as
lit,
you
not like none of the, and then all of the audio was similar. So it was an incredible challenge to that team. And they, combined with this amazing actress, kind of put it all together. And the family, absolutely, to our delight, loved it. So we released the course, and it was an incredible success. But I think what it shows is, when these new technologies come along, there's risks and it can be frightening, but actually you need good agents. And the BBC is the best in that way, acting with integrity, with quality, with thought, to think about how you can do this in a mindful way, being very respectful to the contributors, really respectful to your audiences, so they understand what the technology's been used for and whatnot, and I think is really extraordinary.
So do you think we'll see more of these AI products developed?
I mean, I think with these things, there's always got to be a strong editorial reason to do it. Mm-hmm. So with Agatha, because it was top of the list that everyone wanted, it made sense to do it. But will we suddenly open the floodgates? I don't know. I think you have to do it for the right reason. I think there's a lot of potential there, but that one was, it came from the right place and it was done for all of the right reasons. So I don't think it's just a technology for technology's sake.
But then you have to wonder.
Yeah, I know, it's interesting, right? Who would you pick? Who would you pick if you could pick anyone to teach you anything?
Oh my! Well,
Shakespeare to teach. I'd love Shakespeare to teach me to write a play.
That's very good.
But I'm not sure there's a lot of video footage of him.
It's very poorly lit.
It's very poorly. Yes. Just a candle in the distance.
Right. Yes. So you are married. Your husband, Dan, works in finance. You're raising 2 teen girls. So we ask all of our guests, how do you do it? How do you have this job and the home life and make it all work?
So what I've learned is there are 2, the scientist in me, you have the rate determining step. So there are 2 things for me. One is the happiness of the girls. Someone once said to me, you're only ever as happy as your least happy child. And then my own mental health. So I think for me, I try and do everything I can to make sure those 2 things are okay. Easier said than done. But usually if all of the work stuff is okay, as long as those 2 things are okay. Obviously, making sure your kids are happy is hard and not necessarily within your control. But if they're not happy, I will come home from work. I will not travel. I will sort I will make sure that is always my priority. And we talked a bit about my mental health, but I've learned a lot about how to manage that. So I really do try and make sure I focus on those things. Then apart from that, I mean, it's all the other stuff. You need help. When the girls were young, I had this rule that I didn't want anyone non-family to have the girls more than family. So I would have them Friday, Saturday, Sunday with Dan. My parents would come up on a Sunday and have them on a Monday, which was amazing. And then they would be with the nanny or nursery Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So, my parents really helped. We've had incredible nannies, those sorts of things. So I think it is help, and then just prioritizing the things that matter and not being, if you need to take time for yourself or take time for the kids, like just having the confidence to say, the work stuff is the easiest stuff for me, right? That stuff is okay. I can do the work stuff. So it really is just making sure that those things work. And then a lot of outsourcing.
Right. And what's the division of labor between you and Dan? What's like?
He's brilliant, actually. I find it's very equitable. And we fall naturally into he does all of the sports things. Like my youngest daughter is incredibly sporty. Her sports schedule is ridiculous. And he just manages all of that and those WhatsApp groups. It's one of the things that I think has helped me the most in my career is it's always felt completely equitable between us. We've always sort of done 50-50 for everything.
Right. It doesn't need to be 50-50 at the same time.
Exactly.
All the time.
But that's what I think is key, right? In aggregate, it's been 50-50. And the other thing is we both always think we're right, which is really helpful.
Okay. All right. Here's the question we ask every woman. This is about women, money, and power. What did you do with the first big paycheck you got?
Yeah, I'm a bit embarrassed. I don't know if this is embarrassing or not, but I bought a red Chloe handbag. I had never had a sort of statement handbag before. And I saw it in a shop window and it was so heavy. It was so heavy, even empty. And I've sort of still got it in my cupboard at home. I haven't used it for years, but I can't part with it because it was special. I felt like I just wanted to treat myself. And I did lots of sensible things with my money as well. But that was my first time. I went into Selfridges in London, a big department store. And I was like, I'm just going to buy a statement handbag. So I really remember that.
I think that's a common one for women who feel like, all right, I really want to indulge in something that for a long time seemed out of reach. Nicki, it's time for our lightning round. We have some fun questions for you.
Okay.
If you're a would you rather type, but all we ask you just first thing that pops into your head. Okay, here we go. Would you rather be a contestant on Strictly Come Dancing, also known as Dancing with the Stars, or be a photographer for BBC Earth?
Oh, Strictly Come Dancing every time. Sequins.
Okay, heels or flats?
Heels.
Oh, the whole sequence I should have known. Okay. Would you rather a lunch meeting or a drink after work?
Drink.
Would you rather life on a farm or life in the city?
Ooh, sorry, Mum, life in the city.
What is your favorite Bluey episode?
Flat pack.
Flat pack.
Somehow in 7 minutes, Joe manages to tell the story of human evolution through the creation of a piece of flat pack furniture. And I think it's absolute genius.
Okay. So the last book you read and loved?
Oh, great question. The last book I read and loved was called The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. So I'm a trustee of the Booker Prize and I'm an absolute bookworm. I read all of the time. That is on the shortlist this year and is my absolute favorite.
Okay, so what are some other books on your nightstand?
Well, I'm currently reading The Loneliness of Sunny and Sonia, which is the last of the shortlist, which I haven't read yet. And I really recommend the whole shortlist this year. It is a beautiful, brilliantly curated shortlist, very, very different books. It's quite easy to get into a sort of a rut when you reading the same sort of books. And in recent years, there's the Booker Prize, but there's also the International Booker Prize, which is awarded for translated fiction. And I've started to broaden my horizons a little bit. And so I've read quite a lot of translated Korean fiction lately. So lots of people might know The Vegetarian, but there's also a great book called The Whale, which I absolutely loved. But I will read everything and anything. I mean, my mum always used to say I would read the phone directory if I could. I love reading.
What is a quote or a catchphrase for Bluey that you now use?
Well, instead of swearing, sometimes I say, oh, biscuits. And I quite often say, for real life. They say that in the show. Or dollar bucks for money. They say dollar bucks. So I'm always like, come on, guys, we've got to bring in the dollar bucks.
Okay. Would you rather a lounge by the pool holiday or a tour of all the sites holiday?
A tour of all the sites holiday.
Okay. What's something you've changed your mind about in the last year?
What's something I've changed my mind about in the last year? Miserable.
For or against?
I'm for.
Oh, okay.
I never used to be a fan, but my daughter has convinced me.
Okay. Would you rather laugh uncontrollably or be moved?
Be moved.
Okay. Last one, 2 parts. What is the best investment you ever made and the worst? And it could be any definition of investment. It doesn't need to be a stock or an asset.
I do think it's my relationship with Dan. Because I think, although he may argue I haven't invested that much in it, I think if that doesn't work, nothing works. And he is so stable and constant and there. And I think speaking to lots of women who don't have that, I feel like that's just grounded me in so many ways that I couldn't have done everything I've done without that. And I'm so grateful to him for that. And then I think the worst investment I've ever made, like lots of people who are time poor, I'm prone to gimmicks that promise to sort of save you time. And I'm constantly surprised at having to feed everyone 3 meals a day. And I remember being lured into buying this tub of seeds and they were like, oh, this will transform your meal times. Just sprinkle this onto anything and it will turn it into a meal. And I remember bringing it home and Dan was just like, you've just spent like $50 on some seeds. I mean, this is not going to, and it obviously just sat in the cupboard for about 5 months and then got thrown away. So I think if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. So don't spend $50 on a tub of seeds because it's not going to transform your meal times in the way it was promised.
All right. Very good investment advice. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate having your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.